oneself and another, etc. Now, friend Sariputta, what does the Blessed One say about this? What does he teach? How should we answer if we are to state what has been said by the Blessed One and not misrepresent him with what is contrary to fact? And how should we explain in accordance with the Dhamma so that no reasonable consequence of our assertion would give grounds for criticism? And Venerable Sariputta said, friend, the Blessed One has said that pleasure and pain are dependently arisen. Dependent on what? Dependent on contact. If one were to speak thus, one would be stating what has been said by the Blessed One and would not misrepresent him with what is contrary to fact. One would explain in accordance with the Dhamma, and no reasonable consequence of one's assertion would give grounds for criticism. Therein, friend, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, proponents of karma, who maintain that pleasure and pain are created by oneself, and those who maintain that pleasure and pain are created by another, and those who maintain that pleasure and pain are created both by oneself and by another, and those who maintain that pleasure and pain have arisen fortuitously, being created neither by oneself nor by another. In each case, that is conditioned by contact. Therein, friends, in each case, it is impossible that they will experience anything without contact. The Venerable Ananda heard this conversation between the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Bhumija. He then approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and reported to the Blessed One the entire conversation between the Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Bhumija. The Blessed One said, Good, Ananda. Anyone answering rightly would answer just as Sariputta has done. And then he repeated, just like just now. And then towards the end he said, Ananda, when there is the body, because of bodily volition, pleasure and pain arise internally. When there is speech, because of speech, verbal volition, pleasure and pain arise internally. When there is the mind, because of mental volition, pleasure and pain arise internally, and with ignorance as condition. Either on one's own initiative, Ananda, one generates that body volition, condition by which pleasure and pain arise internally, or prompted by others, one generates that body volition, condition by which pleasure and pain arise internally. Either mindfully, Ananda, one generates that body volition, condition by which pleasure and pain arise internally, or unmindfully, one generates that body volition, condition by which pleasure and pain arise internally. Stop here for a moment. This last part, I said either mindfully or unmindfully, one generates the body volition. Here it translates as either deliberately or undeliberately. I think it's not quite correct because the Pali word is sampajano. Sampajano normally means mindfully, in full awareness. Because if you generate volition, if you generate karma, it's always deliberately. If there is no intention, there is no karma. So probably the better word is mindfully or unmindfully. Similarly, the Buddha says, either on one's own initiative or prompted by others, or mindfully or unmindfully, one generates verbal karma, and then similarly mental karma. And then the Buddha finally says, ignorance is comprised within these states, but with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance, that body does not exist, condition by which that pleasure and pain arise internally. That speech does not exist, condition by which pleasure and pain arise internally. That mind does not exist, condition by which pleasure and pain arise internally. That feel does not exist, that sight does not exist, that base does not exist, that foundation does not exist, condition by which that pleasure and pain arise internally. That's the end of the sutta. This last, the first part is similar to the previous sutta, but the last part here, the Buddha says that we create body volition, that means body karma. Here the Pali word is kaya sancetana. And then the second thing is verbal volition, vachi sancetana. The third one is mental volition, mano sancetana. So because of creating this karma, so pleasure and pain arise. Pleasure and pain and arise. Now what I'd like to mention here is these three sets, kaya sancetana, vachi sancetana and mano sancetana, is concerned with doing karma. And whenever karma is involved, the last part is always mano. Here is mano sancetana. This I have mentioned previously. When we talk about sankhara, also it's the same. If the sankharas, the three sankharas, kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and mano sankhara, if it has got to do with karma, creating of karma, it's always mano, just like here. But when it concerns the dependent origination, it is the other set of three sankharas that is involved. That means kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. So here I like to mention this because whenever we have karma, it's always mano. Here is mano sancetana, sometimes mano sankhara. So the commentaries they interpret this sankhara in the paticca samuppada, dependent origination, as karma, creating of karma. I think that is a mistake because they have confused that mano sankhara with the chitta sankhara. That's the end of that sutta. Now we come to 12.31. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi. There, the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Sariputta thus: Sariputta, in the questions of Ajita in the Parayana, it is said, those who have comprehended the Dhamma and the manifold trainees here asked about their way of conduct, being discreet. Tell me, dear sir, how should the meaning of this, stated in brief, be understood in detail? Let's stop here for a moment. This Parayana is a chapter from the Sutta Nipata, which is a book in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the last Nikaya. But Sutta Nipata is considered one of the old books, one of the original teachings of the Buddha. So here the Buddha is asking the Venerable Sariputta, in this particular sutta concerning the questions of Ajita, there is a verse there that says, those who have comprehended the Dhamma and the manifold trainees here asked about their way of conduct, being discreet. Tell me, dear sir. So the Buddha is asking him, how do you explain this? When this was said, the Venerable Sariputta was silent. The second time and the third time, the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Sariputta thus, in the same way. Sariputta, in the questions of Ajita and the Parayana, it is said, etc., etc. How should the meaning of this, stated in brief, be understood in detail? The second time and the third time, the Venerable Sariputta was silent. So the Venerable Sariputta was not sure how to answer, so he kept quiet. Then the Buddha said, Sariputta, do you see this has come to be? Sariputta, do you see this has come to be? So the Buddha prompted him, and he said, Venerable Sir, one sees as it really is with correct wisdom. This has come to be. Having seen as it really is with correct wisdom, this has come to be. One is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards what has come to be, for its fading away and cessation. One sees as it really is with correct wisdom. Its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Having seen as it really is with correct wisdom, its origination occurs with that as nutriment. One is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards its origination through nutriment, for its fading away and cessation. One sees as it really is with correct wisdom. With the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. Having seen as it really is with correct wisdom, with the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. One is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards what is subject to cessation, for its fading away and cessation. It is in such a way that one is a trainee. And how, Venerable Sir, has one comprehended the Dhamma? Venerable Sir, one sees as it really is with correct wisdom. This has come to be. Having seen as it really is with correct wisdom, this has come to be through revulsion towards what has come to be, through its fading away and cessation. One is liberated by non-clinging. One sees as it really is with correct wisdom. Its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Having seen as it really is with correct wisdom, its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Through revulsion towards its origination through nutriment, through its fading away and cessation, one is liberated by non-clinging. One sees as it really is with correct wisdom. With the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. Having seen as it really is with correct wisdom, with the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. Through revulsion towards what is subject to cessation, through its fading away and cessation, one is liberated by non-clinging. It is in such a way that one has comprehended the Dhamma. Thus, Venerable Sir, when it is said in the questions of Ajita in the Parayana, those who have comprehended the Dhamma and the manifold trainees here ask about their way of conduct, being discreet, tell me, dear Sir. It is in such a way that I understand in detail the meaning of this that was stated in brief. Good Sariputta, and the Buddha repeats the entire statement of the Venerable Sariputta. It is in such a way that the meaning of this stated in brief should be understood in detail. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see, the Buddha asked him a question, asked Venerable Sariputta. Although he is the disciple with the highest wisdom, he also found it a bit difficult to answer. He didn't know exactly what the Buddha wanted him to say. So when the Buddha prompted him by saying, Sariputta, do you see, this has come to be, then he caught the clue. So he answered the Buddha. First he explained about the trainee. That means the trainee here refers to the Pali word Seka. Seka is one who is still training. And it means the Aryans below the Arahant. There are 8 types of Aryans, noble ones. Holy persons. The lowest is the first path, and then that first path after some time will automatically become the first fruit, and then the second path attainer, and then the second fruit, third path attainer, third fruit, and fourth path attainer and fourth fruit. These are the 8 types of holy men, Aryans. Out of these 8, only the Arahant, the fourth fruit person, or the Buddha and Arahant are both fourth fruit attainers. Only the fourth fruit attainer has completed his work, so he's called Aseka, one who does not need to train anymore. Whereas the other 7 are called Seka, trainees. So here, the Venerable Sariputta is explaining what is the state of the trainee. The Venerable Sariputta says, a trainee, he will see with wisdom, this has come to be, something that exists has come into existence, and then it originates because of certain conditions, which we call nutriment. Nutriment is the condition for that thing to come into existence, and then he also sees with the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation.